What's up, everybody? Welcome into another week of the Auburn Blitz podcast here. And we're glad that you've joined us. Is it New Year's Eve? I think that's what it is. Happy
That
New
works.
Year's Eve.
Yep, that's what it is.
Randy's on a porch. I can promise you he's not in a deer stand. So
No, I'm not in a
he's
deer
not.
stand, and I'm nowhere near going and getting on a bass boat to go out in this cold weather fishing either, Brett. There's two things you won't find me doing.
The great outdoorsman
Yeah,
there. So
I was trained by a couple of other really good outdoorsmen in my family. My father being one of them.
Right.
I'll give you a good Camp Hill hunting story. We were at my Jackson family, which I've got a family on that side. One that owned Sportsman's Outpost for a long time. So Victor has always been one to always be an outdoorsman. I'll just leave it at that. So we go hunting when I'm young with my dad and my uncle and all the Jackson side of the family that loved that. And we walked about 200 yards out in the woods. And my dad looked over and said, "I don't know about you, but there's food back there at the house, and there's a heater on, and you can stay out here if you want to, but I'm going right back in." So we walked 200 yards out and turned right around and walked right back inside 200 yards, and that was the end of the hunting trip. And I won't forget that. That was the training that I received growing up. So Brett, you've got a really good fisherman or two in your family. I don't have any.
Well,
my brother's not any good at it either.
Hey, you got to be a little bit crazy to want to go out in this kind of weather and be outdoors. But if you got it in your blood, you love it. So it is what it is. But now you're on a little bit of a vacation. So I know there's a lot of people that take this time of the year to go celebrate New Year's somewhere. And so I know you guys are getting ready to have a good time and the next few days. But we got some stuff we want to talk about here on the Auburn Blitz podcast. And again, I want to thank all of our viewers every single day and watching our numbers grow very, very steadily, and we appreciate it. So we're getting tweaked and doing the things that we need to do on our end. One of the things that we'll start with won't be Auburn related, but it kind of goes back with the kind of, I guess, the common theme of the last month. The disgust of the way our sport is being played and handled. And I'm talking about college football. By the way, Auburn basketball does play today. They played Monmouth, so we'll talk about that. I'm going to go to the game tonight. It should be like a 99-60 game. And I got another cool stat to bring up that we'll throw out about Auburn basketball here in just a little bit. But why play if you're going to quit? Is kind of my deal. And if you look at this from a standpoint of who am I talking about, you've seen Cam Ward this weekend for Miami. He came out and, I've seen arguments on both sides for, he played a half and he gave us another good half of great football to watch. And then the other side is exactly what we're talking about. Why play if you are going to sit out the second half, watch your team get beat? When if you could have gotten in the game, if you'd have played the whole game, you probably would have won the game. But you were content to sit over there and watch your team lose when you could have gone back in there in that last drive and won the game and given your fans, what they came to watch and pay for. There's a couple different ways to look at this thing. But if I were Cam Ward, I'd just opted out. You had that opportunity. Don't play a half and then go stand on the sideline and be a cheerleader and watch your team go down with the ship.
Well, it's very odd the way that it all played out to begin with. I'm with you that if you don't want to play in these bowl games that don't mean anything, you don't have anything to gain from them, and you've got a lot that you're risking because he's a top 5 pick.
Right.
I don't know the number on that, but it's a massive number. And he's got to do something pretty much silly like this to get himself in trouble. Because now the conversation's not on what a great year that he had. I mean, you've sat up here all year long.
I love Cam Ward. I love what he does.
You've begged for him all year. You wished Auburn would have gone out in the offseason and picked him up, and we may have been an 8, 9, 10 wins team with great quarterback play because a lot of the other pieces were in place. But that wasn't the way that this worked out. So my point is, why go, though? Why do you go? I know there was a record to be broken, but still, there's a lot of turmoil that can come with a decision like this. And I ask you going in this morning, there's no part of me that thinks Mario Cristobal didn't know that he was going to sit after the first half. You can't tell me that he went in at halftime and said, Coach, congratulations, you had me for a half, but I'm not. No, I mean, they had a plan to sit him in the second half, and still the coaching staff, the administration, everyone involved made the decision that they were good with that. So that is a very odd decision, and it is a black eye on a kid that I would be willing to bet he wasn't the only one that was involved in making this decision. The handlers that are around him, the agent that he's got on board, all of the above probably was involved in this decision. And no, I don't think it's the right one. I think it's a very bad look on him. And if your goal is to be as high a draft pick as you possibly can, going in and playing like this only puts a black eye on it. Now, I think back, there's been a lot of great players that we would have thought, why in the world would Christian McCaffrey not go play in a bowl game? Well, because there's a lot to risk and not a lot to gain. And a lot of other players around you that were also involved throughout the season no longer there. So you're not the only one that's making a decision that this is no longer important to you. Hell, we've got players in the 12-team playoff opting out, Brett. We got backup quarterbacks opting out in the 12-team playoff. We don't have to like it, but as you said, that's the state of college football that we're living in right now.
Well, which makes this decision even dumber. I mean, because you go out there and risk for a half. So that didn't make sense for him to go out and risk playing for a half and getting hurt in the first quarter or the second quarter. But then you say, okay, we got through it. I went out here and, I gave our fans one more half. And, he had an opportunity and, he set records at Miami. And, he's only there 1 year, so I don't know how much attachment anybody gets to a player now. I mean, we're obviously really attached to Cam Newton, and he was only here a year. He won a Heisman Trophy, and Cam Ward was up for the Heisman Trophy and probably would have been up for the Heisman Trophy at Auburn if he would have come here. But just not a very kosher way to leave college football, especially when you're one of the top picks and top players in the country. And you just didn't do yourself any favors, man. And look, you asked me before we went on the air, well, it was predetermined. Do you think it was predetermined? Well, if it was, to me, that's even a worse look. So we're going to go out there and get a half out of you, and then I'm gonna agree to let you just sit over here and just kind of bail.
Do you think it's predetermined, or you think he just walked in at halftime?
I have no idea. I don't know what went on. I'll be honest with you.
I bet there's an insurance policy involved in this. I have no idea if that's true or not.
Right.
But my guess is there's a lot of variables that went into this that he knew he couldn't come back at the end of that ball game because of the decisions that were already made before. And that's the way it played out. No, it's not a good look. And it's a lot of buzz out there in a time where it's real easy to jump on the sport. And because most out there don't like the way this thing's playing out. I don't think we're the only ones in the media saying this. And the media makes money off doing this. I mean, you and I do this as part of our living. We're talking heads.
Right.
And the media doesn't want to get up here and just bash college football because, that's your living that you're talking about. I think it's the average everyday fan that's losing here. I mean, people are expected to buy into a new group every 6 months is a real difficult ask. And then the remainder of the people, the few boosters that you have that have the disposable income to afford these teams that are going out there. And then you've got to make a decision in the offseason on whether you're willing to pay. What did Cam Moore get paid at Miami this year, Brett?
I was at $2 million, 1.5
plus
million,
NIL,
something like that. Yep.
Plus NIL deal. So he's probably a $3 to $4 million deal for Miami this year. I mean, that's the type of money that you have to spend. That's what Auburn's spending on Jackson Arnold. Like it or not like it, that's what it costs to get one of these top quarterbacks, and then to lose them the way that you did right there. Very disappointing. I'm with you on that, but I don't think that this thing's going back in the bottle.
Well,
it'll only get worse moving
forward. It is an easy target right now, and it should be, because everything that we have grown up and stood for and watched and loved has kind of been tossed out the window. You never would have seen players back in the day that cared about these universities that had something bought in with these schools do what we saw. I mean, and again, this is not just a solo shot at Cam Ward. There's players doing this all over the place, but it just shows you the shallowness of the relationship between the player and these universities. It's just a transaction, man.
And the coaches.
And the same.
It's just a transaction for them coaches too. You know, that's the battle that I've had with you over the years. It's like, we like to throw the players under the bus, but these coaches, they'll up and leave this time of year too. They get a better deal somewhere else. They'll be in the middle of bowl game preparation. And next thing you know, all of the coordinators are heading off. You know, I'm thinking back to Alabama playing in championship games where they're trying to decide if their offensive coordinator is going to be associated with the team going into the bowl game. I mean, really, we've allowed that to be part of the conversation. Think back on that. Lane Kiffin in the days. And I mean, that there's a lot of blame. Trust me, I'm 100% behind you on what you're saying about Cam Ward. But this is infiltrated down into the administration and the coaches too. And you expect the players to be on the up and up, but you allow everybody else to just do whatever the hell they want to go make their money. Well, it's the same way both ways you go, and it's been a problem. This didn't just start the last 2 years.
Well, you know, I agree with that to a point. You know,
you disagree with Lane Kiffin calling the plays for Alabama all the way up until the championship game, and because he gets a different job somewhere else, it's okay for him to up and leave, and the players can't do something like this.
Well,
you're okay with that?
No, I'm not saying I'm okay with that particular instance. But
well,
I mean,
that happened.
Well, let me just say something, man. Coaches didn't get a job at 18 years old. They didn't get a head coaching job at 18, 19 years old, Randy.
Does it matter how old
they handed? Yeah, it is, because they handed all the control of the players right now at their age, where, I mean, basically the universities and the people with the leverage have handed it all over to the players.
I know. I think a lot of the leverage still sits in the coach's lap too, Brett.
But a coach has had a professional career. They have a
leverage game with us every opportunity they get.
A professional career.
Did it as well as anybody with a couple of big wins.
Guess what they do? Guess what coaches do? They sign contracts. They're employees of a university. That's the difference. It's
okay then for a contract to read.
Can they leave every 6 months? Can they leave every 6 months?
Pretty much,
a coach
yeah.
With a buyout, if the other school wants to pay a massive buyout,
but they do it. They do it.
Well, that's contractual. I have no problem with that, Randy. You can't hold any player accountable to anything right now.
No, I'm good with you I'm good with you signing a contract. Here's the argument.
But they're not signing any contracts, Randy. There's no player signing any contracts.
I said I'm good with them starting to. Here's the problem I have.
They're not right now.
With what you're saying is you're giving the coaches the option to go and just leave on a kid. We've had it happen locally, and I'm not going to go into that. But you build a kid up, you do all of these things. You're supposed to be the guy that they're looking up to, and then the next week you're gone. And, you know, Tommy Tuberville and all that happened with that. Look, my point is, over the years, we've allowed these coaches to do that.
You don't see coaches doing this in mass numbers all over the country. If you were coaching at Texas Southern and you're the hottest coach, yeah, you build relationships and things. But if Ole Miss comes and calls and says, hey, we want you to be the coach next year, and you have a time frame of either accepting that job or not, there is no perfect time to leave on anybody, right? I mean, we can both agree on that.
Definitely not heading into the bowl game.
Well, I mean,
it's definitely not when you've been calling the plays all year and you're the offensive coordinator for a championship contending team, and you allow them just to leave before that. I don't know.
We see other schools that let the coach stay and finish the thing out. I've seen it both ways. That you're using one example of Lane Kiffin. I mean, we both agree that Lane Kiffin's not the highest moral guy on the planet, and he's kind of always been about himself. I'm not saying that's the case with everybody. We've seen certain coaches finish out coaching with a school and then go take another job. It's all about what the situation is at that time. I'm saying that's apples to oranges with these players right now. You got 2 windows that you have to re-recruit them every time. They're shopping themselves constantly. There are no regulations on, we've got this, you can't call and talk to entice a player during the season. Come on, man. All of these guys know and have things lined up where you don't think Caleb Downs knew where he was going before he left to go to Ohio State? You think all that happened in a week's window of time of him going? Do you think all these other guys don't have an idea and a plan and have something already in place that they already know where they're going to go? I'm talking about the top 0.1%, right? But yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying a little bit on the coaches, but there's no good time to leave anybody. What I'm saying is that coaches at least held to a contract, and there are things that have to go down for them to get out of it. They just can't walk out of town, take the next best deal. There has to be somebody buy them out. There's a lot of things that have to go on. And I don't think anybody, including myself, is trying to bash somebody for bettering themselves. That's kind of how this is getting spun this morning. I'm all about a player advancing. You got to have some type of rule put in place where they can't just up and leave you from one week to the next. That's my point.
I don't know how to administer it. I don't. I mean, you and I work in the high school ranks, man. It happens in high school. Midway through the season, you'll see a kid playing for one really good program, and then the next week he'll be making a legitimate move and playing for the rival, man. It's wild to see where everything's moved to. And Randy, would you hire a kid and make him the highest paid employee because his dad was good at making shirts? No. I personally wouldn't, but I know people that would. And if that's where, hey, Glenn, if that's where they want to spend their money, I think that you have to give them, and look back to my high school point, Brett, if you don't think that's not what's going on, you're crazy. There's a lot of people in some of these communities out there, and this is not NIL driven, but don't you agree with that? There's a lot of people that find jobs for parents of kids to move them into certain communities with homes that are already set up for them to play ball there at that school. You think that's going on, Brett?
What's going on?
Well, you didn't.
I'm looking at all these comments. Sorry.
Kids moving around based off Glenn's question to me. Would I hire somebody that is a screen printer just because this kid was a good ball player in the community? I said, no, I personally wouldn't, but I know a lot of people that would. And I'm not blind enough to not know that goes on everywhere. And I think it's going on in some communities more than others right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to happen. I mean, you're going to have people move around and things like that. You said that we insisted Kirby Smart walk away from Bama days from playing for a national championship. Again, I think it goes both ways. You got some that say, you want to stay or you want to leave. I mean, again, to my point, we're grouping coaches with these players, man. And if you like the way everything's structured and you love 2 portal windows and you love guys that have no loyalty, and you can say, yeah, it's transactional with coaches too, but they have a professional career that they've built up, and they didn't start off making $5 million as an assistant coach. We're handing 17 and 18-year-old kids out of high school. They ain't played a down in college football, $7-8 million, and the rate's going up. And the people out here, but hold on.
But it's leverage, Brett.
Well,
this is leverage, man. Do you want talent or do you not?
Well, it's fine with talent. It's fine with talent. I'm saying that you're defending a broken system. You're defending a broken system.
Because nobody's fixing it. And you can sit up here for the next month, and me and you can talk about it every time we come on air, and there's no answer to it.
I'm going to say that I'm going to continue to say that I don't like it. I'm not. This has nothing to do personal with the kids, has nothing to do personal with the coaches. It has to do with the system that us as adults and the fans, that if you are watching and reading anything, are absolutely disgusted with how this thing's playing out. That, again, figure this out. I said it a couple of weeks ago.
You won't figure
Implement
it out
some kind of. Well, who you going to hire? What leader are you hiring, and what kind of power are they going to have?
Somebody, I don't know.
What kind of power are you going to give them? Who's going to give them the power?
If you don't hire a strong leader, I want you to give everybody an idea how you see this being fixed in the short term.
But I'm just saying, who's going to give them the power? You got to first start there.
The Power Four has got to go out and say, look, we hold all the leverage. The SEC holds probably 50% of the leverage. I don't know what the eyeball test to how many people are watching games in the SEC compared to the other, but that's where the money's driven. And so that conference director's got to say, look, we've got to get somebody and give them all the power to go out here to do these dozen things that we need to have done that's not currently done. And until they do that, people like me and you are going to sit up here and complain nonstop
I think it's
about
good.
things
I think it's good. I
about
think we
things
all
that
need to keep doing it.
but I don't think it's going to cure it until they actually make a decision that they don't like it. The SEC's got to make the decision that no, we don't like this current setup. Yes, I don't know who the person is. I mean, we saw Coach Franklin come out yesterday say give the reins to Nick Saban. I've said it on here
Yeah, I
a
saw
dozen
that. Yeah.
times. You may
Yeah.
not like it, but I
No, I
think a
mean,
lot of people would go just give it to somebody that's got a backbone to go up there, kind of like we're getting in this country right now with Donald Trump. Give me somebody with a backbone to call a spade when it's ugly and when things are set up that's not beneficial to the whole. And let's give them some power and let them go voice the reasons that these coaches and administrators don't like it. But until they decide to do that, there's not going to be any answers for it. And it's very disappointing. And trust me, I don't like the Cam Ward deal, but I didn't like the Kirby Smart and the Lane Kiffin deal either. I don't like that a coach would say after you go through 14 weeks of football and you're playing for a championship that, look, man, I got a better deal over here. I'm sorry, man. I've been coaching you up, been calling all your plays the whole time, but I'm going to go to this better deal
well, I mean,
at the last second.
Well, I think it has to do with the university telling them to go on more than them leaving. I mean, I think Kirby Smart wanted to stay, and Alabama insisted he go ahead and go. I mean, I think there's a lot of times it's determined on the situation. He just gets hired they just had this happen with a backup quarterback at Ohio State, him coming in cleanup duty. The team had to vote because the kid already went ahead and got in the portal. And so Ryan Day asked the players, y'all want him to play or not? And the players like, yeah, let's let him, let's keep him on till the end. I mean, the kid could have opted out like we've seen some of these other ones, but it was a discussion between the players and him to keep him on throughout. And so Luke on here Saturday was saying the same exact thing. There's some of these situations are timing. If a kid doesn't act or a coach doesn't act at that particular time, that university or other entity may move on from them because they don't want to wait. So a lot of times, especially with all these stupid windows that are open, coach or university sitting out there going, man, I don't want to wait another month for you to run through the playoffs for me to get you to start working for me, because we got to start building our program over here. So it's a timing thing. It's all these windows. It's exactly why you see all these coaches that are pissed off. You see everybody just up in arms because they can't navigate all this stuff anymore, man. And you're right. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do is up and leave your team, but the situation almost predicates it happen that way sometimes, and it's unfair.
It is, but I'm on the coaches this morning a little bit, Brett, because sometimes it's just
really
it's hypocritical. Jason Caldwell said this about Jim Larinaga the other day. Jim Larinaga rode a complete transfer roster from Miami to the Final Four. Jason ran down the roster that they had. All of them that were key players on that Miami team were transfers, and then all of a sudden, when the transfer deal doesn't work out for him, he's quitting, and he's just throwing a black eye on everything or everybody that's working it that way. It's hypocritical. We really give these coaches the leeway a lot of times to say and do things and then they'll go in front of a camera and they'll say the complete opposite. I mean, me and you've had a problem with that with a number of coaches, and I won't bring up all of them here on this show, but several of them that have been at Auburn. They talk out of both ends of their mouth.
I'm not saying I understand that, and I get you. I'm not over here as the Coaches Association defender this morning either. I'm saying that the way it's handled, though, those guys, okay, he's stepping down. He's retiring. He's getting out of the sport. He's 76 years old. He's had a 50-year career. I hear what Jason said. He did ride a transfer portal roster to the Final Four
with big NIL money spent on.
I get that. What he was saying in the gist of things is kind of what I'm saying. Jim Larinaga was held to a contract, and he chooses to get out of that whenever. If you want to retire and go to the house at that point, that's different than than you leaving and going somewhere else because you didn't get your way.
Halfway through the season, Brett.
What I'm saying, I guess that's what he wants. I guess that's what he wants to do.
I guess we're gonna give him the
buddy.
Since it's not going your way and you're not gonna make a Final Four this year and you don't have the roster,
we're in a society full of quitters.
Well,
we're in a society full of quitters.
So I'm just not
we've designed a system. Well, I understand that, but here's the deal. Contractually, and I'm not defending Larranaga on that part, on quitting during the middle of the season. I'm not defending him on that. My whole point is, when you get hired, their employees, they have a set of regulations they have to meet, and to get out of that, it has to be a mutual agreement. They can't just do what Larranaga's not going to another school, so this is kind of an outlier situation. He's quitting. He's going to the house. I'm talking about a coach leaving and going to coach another team or wherever. They can't just do that. Not the way these players are doing it right now. I have no problem with players getting NIL money. I told you that a million times, and you can defend me on that. What I have a problem with is this portal. Every 6 months you have free agency, which is jacking these prices way up into the sky. I have no problem with a guy getting paid for his talent. I'm all for it. But every 6 months he goes out and reshops himself. And look, I'm not blaming the kid for doing it because he's playing the game that's been given to him. I'm talking about the game itself has ruined the sport that we love so much because nobody can get a handle on it, and it sucks. And I'm not defending coaches. I'm not defending kids. I'm talking about us as fans and us in the media having to deal with this shit all the time, and everybody's tired of it. And if you go on social media and you go to the fans that spend the money on the tickets and you go to the people that support and do all this stuff, they're tired of it, man. And so, yeah, it's going to come to a head sooner than later. We've seen the sport fall precipitously just in the last 7 months, man. This thing's going downhill at a rocket pace. So I'm hoping with all of this talk and everybody like you and me getting on here talking about this and people sharing it and agreeing with us that somebody will step up and fix this daggum problem. I don't know who it's going to be, but I hope it's sooner than later.
They've got to give the power to somebody. That's my point. Until they give the power to somebody. And, the point that we had the other day, I can't remember who it was. We had a phone call in on one of our television shows, and it may have been Charles. But, conversation that he was saying was, put yourself in Kelly's shoes. If you go and you lose every court battle that you're up against, how in the world are you expecting him to go and have any power anyway? And the NCAA right now, every court battle that they have, they lose, Brett. So I don't know how to fix that. I do know that it's really odd to me, and I had this conversation yesterday on a trip. How is the profit sharing deal going to work out with Title IX? Can you explain that to me?
There's not going to be any profit sharing with Title IX. I don't think.
How is Title IX going to be good with this? Federal money that goes to these universities that are spent, and the football team's going to get a lot more money than, say, the soccer program. How's that going to work out, Brett? You worked inside the university system.
Well, up until this point, you had to match. Like your rosters, everything had to be equal. Do you see anybody out here policing this?
No, but that's also, it's not.
That's a federal regulation, by the way.
It's not meshed into the university yet. But when that profit sharing gets meshed in, how is that going to play?
You heard what Jason. Well, you're going to have to break football away, and that
makes sense.
Well, that's what Luke and I talked about after you got off Saturday. That's what's coming, and like he said, you want to talk about destroying the sport. When that happens, the sport's officially dead. And
not only that sport, Brett, a lot of sports that are funded by that football is what's going to fall to the wayside.
Right. Yeah. They're going to.
How Title IX and whoever cares at all anymore. I'm not sure anybody cares anymore because I'm the only one that brings it up all the
You're
time.
going to go back and look at this portal and say it was the death knell for college athletics. I'm just telling you.
I agree with that.
The portal, it's not the NIL. People been getting paid forever. Okay. The problem with this whole deal is the portal. and I isolated that with you guys a couple of weeks ago. If you just knock out the free agency and everybody gets a chance to sign a deal and a contract with a university to play for at least 2 years, I'll tell you what else it's doing too. These kids are kids. You got to remember that. So in this society we live in, if something doesn't go right, they want to hightail and get out, right? They want to look for that portal window sitting out there is an escape route for them when they probably don't need an escape route in their life. Maybe they need to tough it out a little bit. Maybe they need to learn how to fight through some stuff and some adversity because that's all I ever hear in the business world before I left the college was the one thing that businesses craved more than anything were soft skills and toughness and the basic things of making an employee a good employee, showing up to work on time, doing the right things. At the drop of a hat of adversity, you don't quit your job and go home and look for another one. That's what this portal treat. This is what it's tricking these kids into thinking. Instead of it being an opportunity to go somewhere else and flourish, it's an escape route when things aren't going their way. Again, the small 0.01% at the top of the portal that can choose where they want to go, that's different than the thousands that get in thinking they're going to go find a better situation when there's not a better situation to find. So Brian said he could have gotten hurt in the next to last game as much as last game. The kid is obviously selfish. Breaking a record was worth him risking injury, but winning the game wasn't. He had 3 touchdowns in the first half, had a great half, and then they came out in the second half and they couldn't pee a drop offensively because their star quarterback wasn't in the game. Ed said Cristobal knows if it weren't for Cam Ward, Miami would not have won 9 games. So I can assure you he approved him playing a half. The Miami fans also saw how important Ward was to his team, scored 10 points in the second half. We've been talking about that all year. You take Cam Ward off that team and put him on Auburn and you flip the records. Auburn's 9-3 and they're 5-7. There's no question about it. Absolutely no question. Because there wasn't any development that had to go into Cam Ward. Cam Ward was already a pre-bought product. That guy had already he came as a package. UPS delivered him to the front door and said, "Here you go." You didn't have to assemble Cam Ward. He had already he was Cam Newton. Again, I told everybody the last time Auburn went and got a Cam, it worked out for him. Why couldn't we just gotten another one? We could have built another statue out in front of Jordan Hare. But you're right. Ed's dead on, Randy. They saw what a bad problem they've got at Miami and what's smoking. It's exactly the 10-11 season for Auburn. We saw what happened in 11 when you took Cam Newton off that team, didn't we? It went down the tubes fast.
Well, it was already there in 8-9 too, though.
But you get a guy in here and you can smoke and mirror it for 1 year and go, oh man, we got a great program.
Well,
no,
Auburn
you got a great player.
Auburn had a pretty good product around. For Auburn to have won 7-8 football games, and you and I were at that Northwestern game that they won late, it was a pretty good team. It wasn't a great team, but it had a lot of good pieces on that team and a lot of seniors that were coming back. And I think that was the reason that Cam chose Auburn over Mississippi State was the amount of seniors and the pieces that were going to be around him. But, and that all worked out. But here in this transfer portal, you got a graphic you'll pop up here in a minute. Auburn's got 18 that are in the portal right now. Now, have we replaced a lot of them? Sure. Do we look down any of the list and go, boy, I hate that we're losing him? Probably not. But when we got them, we were happy with them.
Right.
12 months ago, you and I were sitting on here, if we're just like we are today, and I'm sitting where you are and you are where you are, we were talking about Walker White and how much of a key piece he was to getting him early and how having him go out there and close on this great class of receivers that we've gotten because they want to play with Walker White. And then 12 months later, we're going to pop up an 18-person graphic where we go, man, I don't care if you leave.
I'll just go ahead and pull it up. I'll read Hughes' comment first. And could a league like the UFL replace college football or merge as a private partnership using the college facilities and name? Hey, Hughes, he brings up a good point. We've actually discussed with, a potential billionaire going out there and buying the top 40, 50 teams in deciding they want to run a different league. I think we're on a fast track headed that way. I really do. The problem is the college names and at that point, the college name didn't mean anything anymore. Auburn University, the AU on the logo on the side, the helmet, man, that ain't Auburn University anymore. Now you're in a completely different ball game. No pun intended. Steven said modern day Moneyball for college football. I mean, that's where we are. I mean, I hate to be that way, but that is where we are. And again, the whole point and the passion, like Luke said, Randy, Saturday, comes from us growing up and watching in the universities and going to school there and what it means to be a part of that. When you take that away, when you take that passion away from the fans and you just make it simply transactional, like the pros, we've got the pros. We already have the pros. Why do we want the pros again? Why do we want another professional league? That's what made college football so great and what made the pageantry of the bowls. I mean, like they talk about this. The bowls have no pageantry anymore because it's just another game. There's nothing to it. So there's the list of players that are going out for Auburn. Hank Brown, Holden Geriner, Walker White, top 3 quarterbacks. We got a completely different quarterback room at Auburn right now, and I think we upgraded. But again, like you said, we were all excited about Walker White. Now he's going to be wearing a Baylor uniform. He'll be playing against Auburn the first week of next season. I can go on down through here. Who actually played on here? All right, Caleb Wooden, Antonio Kite, Michael Riley all got limited playing time. Camden Brown got a lot of snaps. Got a lot of snaps. Just never could get over the hump.
I didn't see him get too many opportunities, honestly. I mean,
I did last year, and I watched him drop a bunch, and I was there in person where he had a chance to make an unreal play by himself down the middle of the field at Vanderbilt, and he just dropped the football. I just think he was so unreliable. I think they kept trying to go to him, and he couldn't ever do it. Keontae Scott, Percy Lewis, Sam Jackson, all guys that were part of the team this past year and thought they were. Keontae Scott was a guy that I think a lot of people thought was, you and I both included, maybe the best player on the team a couple of years ago, and he changed positions, and that went away. So.
Well, here's the reality of those 18. I'm reading through there, and I think 15 of the 18 were 4 or 5 star athletes. That you can pull it back up. Tell me if they were all 4 and 5 star. I see 3 of them that I can point to and go, I'm almost certain he was a 3-star. And my point here is that
Caleb Burton was, Cam Brown, Michael Riley, Antonio Kite.
Geriner was a 4-star. Walker White was a 4/5.
It's probably at least 10 of them for sure.
I'd say somewhere between 10 and 15 of this 18 were 4 and 5-star guys. So you can say, well, they missed them. They didn't get them right, or we just didn't pick the right ones. Because that's a good group. That's a good list of athletes, Brett. There's a way to spin all of those guys being very productive there.
Well, I think there's outlier issues with Keontae Scott. I'll use him for an example. Man, he was a stud player 2 years prior, and this year he moved to corner. It didn't work out, man. And I don't know if that was a conflict with him refusing to go back to safety, if they'd already made decisions to play somebody else there. I don't know, but he got lesser and lesser playing time as the year went on, and now he's going to move on. But he was Auburn's punt returner last year. I told you this the other day. I thought, man, if he's in there instead of Coy Moore, we probably win the Iron Bowl on the punt return. But he got hurt. That's how dependable he was as a player. So Percy Lewis, we got him out of the portal. He was terrible. We were trying to, again, fix a problem, and he became a bigger problem. And Walker White, Holden Geriner, and Hank Brown. Hank Brown got on the field a little bit this year, started a whole game, and then came in the Arkansas game and crapped the bed, and they pulled him, put Peyton Thorne back in there. My point with Walker White is, if you're so daggum good, and we see freshmen playing all over the country, Marcel Reed, Lenore Sellers, we see freshman quarterbacks all over the place. If he's so dang good, he wasn't even the second option off the bench, Randy. I mean, I don't understand it. How did he not get in the game?
Hugh Freeze picked him, Brett.
I'm not blaming that. You missing my
I'm
point.
just saying. Look, I hear you, but he picked him. He was the one that he went and got and
He
sold
did.
us on.
I can't believe he couldn't get on the field.
Well, you and I didn't pick him. And you and I didn't sell it to the fan base that he was the answer for us moving forward. We didn't sell it to the receiving core that we went and got that, look, you're going to come in here and be part of this with this guy to build this thing back up. It's not mine and your decisions to make on these guys. But when you get into year 3 with Hugh Freeze, most of the ones you're left with, he made the choice to go get them. And if they don't work out, it's a poor decision on his part for the ones that he picked. And so we had Walker White around for less than 12 months, and now we've already just conceded that he wasn't going to be the one to go to Auburn. That's fine. I've told you, Deuce Knight, but I don't want to sit on here next year with you, just rack it up, and we're in December, at the end of December next year, and we're going, well, Deuce Knight just didn't work out. Jackson Arnold had such a great year that it's going to keep Deuce Knight from seeing the field for a year or two, and sayonara. Because don't think it can't happen, Brett. It definitely can happen in today's world of college football.
No, I 100% agree he chooses all those guys. What I'm saying is, you would have thought if he would have had any semblance of being the guy, that you would have thought Hugh Freeze would put him in there as quickly as possible, because Holden Geriner wasn't going to get in. And then he goes to Hank Brown, who elevates up the list behind Peyton Thorne. Peyton Thorne gets benched after the Cal game. I thought that's when we were going to see Walker White. We didn't. It was Hank Brown that came in. So I don't know. It's one of the crazy things. He was a highly touted guy that helped build this recruiting class, and then now he's gone. So
he's gone, and we're questioning whether he was ever good enough to play. Who knows, man?
Time will tell. Time will tell.
I watched enough Auburn football last year to question everything that went on offensively. So not just him, but other decisions that were made out there. I could question those just as easy. So Ed's got a really good point here. Saban quitting told me everything. He, for 15 years, had the best players, and he did not like not having the best roster going into every game. Let that sink in. Saban had the best players for 15 years. There's something to having 5 stars. There's tons to having 5 stars. You got to develop those 5 stars too.
We all have talked about this. There's a part of this deal with Saban that, and I know you like to tout Saban, and I think he's a great mind for college football. But let's be honest, he knew, and at this point in time in his career, what he had already accomplished, it ain't going to be the same anymore. And he was going to have to fight these battles. And again, this is not Nick Saban hightailing it out in the middle of the night to go coach to go coach Texas. Okay. This is him saying, I've had enough of the situation. I'm going to the house. Now, he didn't quit in the middle of the year like Jim Larinaga. So that's apples to oranges too. But I have no problem with 70-year-old men deciding they've had enough and they're going to go to the house. I have no problem with that. They've spent their time. They've done their due diligence. Nick Saban earned what he got. Jim Larinaga spent 50 years coaching basketball. He did what he did. And going back to my point with that portal, do I like 16, 17, 18-year-old kids deciding that they need to get paid $5 million and get shopped every 6 months? No, there ain't no part of me that'll ever come on here and say I like that system. Okay? I understand it's the system we got right now. I'll never agree with it, and I'll never support it from that standpoint. Steven said, wasn't Walker White a big recruiter for Auburn? Absolutely,
yes.
He was. Absolutely.
He was the recruiter.
Freeze better have some plays for Knight. I think you would like to think he will. That guy's so talented.
I'll believe it when I see it.
I mean, you would like to think he will. We're going to have a full-out quarterback battle again in the spring. I don't think this is just – there's probably been some things said to Jackson Arnold coming in, getting paid $2.5 million to come in and play quarterback. But there's going to be a good quarterback battle between him and Deuce Knight in the spring. And if you're in Hugh Freeze's situation where you're on the hot seat with Brent Venables and a couple of these other, there is no next year. You better win 8-9 games this year. You better put your best option out on the field. That's what it all boils down to.
Well, we saw the decisions he made this year. I mean, I think about halfway through the season, we started saying it this year that, at least the last 3 or 4 games, let us see Walker White out there and see if he is an option for Auburn and if he is the option. But maybe the practice was so bad that you couldn't take a chance to put him out there. To me, you said it a bunch too. I mean, put him out there and let's see, because it doesn't matter. We're only going to win 4 or 5 games anyway. And it ends up the same way. I mean, we won 4 or 5 football games, and I'm still not sure Peyton Thorne was the reason that we won any of those the last one that we won. But it is what it is.
Yeah. I think Walker didn't want to compete for the starting job. If he was concerned about QB development, it didn't change from day one of portal opening. It changed after a 2-year QB came in. So, again, he didn't get there's a point there. I mean, Hugh Freeze went out and got 2 other quarterbacks, actually 3. And that's when he decided to make the decision. We'll see if Walker White can go over to Baylor and be a starter. I mean, he's going to have a chance to go through spring practice with Baylor and showcase his talents. And again, another quarterback from Arkansas that Auburn went and got that didn't pan out in the long line of Kyle Frazier and Cody Burns. Cody Burns got moved to receiver, and I guess that worked out pretty good. But, I mean, every time we go to Arkansas and get the number 1 quarterback in the state, it doesn't work out for us. So, Randy, I somewhat agree about development, but Saban didn't teach Jalen Waddle any moves or speed, but maybe how to read defenses. Waddle had it when he stepped on campus. Kind of going back to I wonder who developed Cam Ward. If we talked about Cam Ward being a developed product arriving at Miami, would have done the same at Auburn. I mean, is this people may need to start looking at Washington State. I mean, Mateer coming out of Washington State now, going to Oklahoma. He's probably the best dual threat quarterback in the country. Mm-hmm. You look at Cam Ward last year. I mean, these guys are coming out. Who's up there developing daggum quarterbacks? Maybe that's who we need to look at.
That's a great question. I agree, Ed. The only point I make in year 3 is the guys that you have on campus are the ones you chose. So you better go choose a bunch of them with that it factor. You need to go find a bunch of Jalen Waddles if you want to play in this league and win championships. And I think Deuce Knight is one. I told y'all after watching him in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game where he looked like a man amongst boys with the best in those 2 states, that if we can't develop Deuce Knight, Lord help us, at Auburn, we may never develop a high school quarterback. That's how confident I am watching his skill set and his demeanor and the way that he carries himself. Would you agree, Brett?
I agree. No, I agree with that. I think so. I think Jerron brings up a good point here. He said Walker didn't want to smoke a competition. And I'll say this in favor of his comment. Again, I go back to my portal deal. The portal's that little magnet over here pulling players going, hey, man, it's the good cop, bad cop playing over here on the side saying, hey, man, you're not getting treated right. You need to go somewhere else. So it allows these kids to jump when maybe they shouldn't jump. I'm not saying there's some that jump and it works out for them really good.
Yeah. That's the very hard part is the Bo Nixes of the world.
Right.
When you have an example that you can point to and go, that kid made the right decision. And anybody that watches what's happened with Auburn since he left, and
Bo was there for 3 years, and Walker was there for 12 months.
I'm hearing you, and he started day 1 too. But you still, even when you're the starter and you're the guy getting the snaps, it may not be the right setup around you. And I'll go to receivers because you and I have the good fortune of seeing a lot of great receivers coming out of the state of Alabama. Well, you may get sold a bill of goods that you're going to get to go do these certain things at this school, and then when you end up there, the coaches change. There's a new coordinator. Right. There's a new system in place. It doesn't mesh with what you bring to the table the best. And then you end up out there and you're like Camden Brown this year, where, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 balls are thrown your way.
I have no problem with Camden Brown leaving and going and playing somewhere else after look, Camden Brown stuck it out. Walker White was here 12 months, and then he's in a revamped quarterback room. And it leads people, whether you want to like it or not, to Jerron's comment and a couple other comments we've had, makes him look like he didn't want to compete. Because if you go back to what I said a few weeks ago about if players had to stay 2 years before they could get in the portal,
I like that.
if you had to stay 2 years.
Yeah.
You force him now to compete in that room. And maybe he emerges as the lead. What's to say Walker White couldn't have beat those guys out, man? He was a highly touted guy coming out of high school too.
I think for the best players too, Brett, it'll help their value.
I agree with you.
When you get to that 2 year, because you can't go and cut but one deal at that 2 year mark.
Bingo.
You can go in there and cut your big money deal.
I love it.
Then the schools have to go, okay, do I want Perry Thompson, who just had 943 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns this year in year 2 at Auburn? Do I want to give him big time money? Heck yeah.
Dang right I do.
It takes his value up. I mean, I
have no problem, Randy, paying that kid for that. Not coming out of high school demanding that I need $5 million over 3 years, and then I can't really be held to that. I can leave in 6 months if I want to.
I really like I like the one transfer portal window that you're bringing up, and it being at the 2 year mark. I think that's a really.
You want me to go leave college football?
Hell, somebody needs to. I can tell you one thing. I
don't care.
I'm tired of arguing with you on answers that we're not going to come to a consensus, no matter how many more times.
Somehow it's weird that we agree, but we come at it from different angles. That's the crazy thing about this is
I don't want anybody to tune in to think Brett and I are arguing with each other, because we fought with each other on this too long. Brett knows that 10 years ago I had a problem, and I'm going to continue having a problem with hypocritical coaches.
I agree with that.
I think they're hypocrites, man. I think way too often they get in front of a camera and they sell this bill of goods to kids and the fan base and everybody, and then they do the direct opposite. And after a while, you just are like,
So then we've swung the pendulum all the way on the other side, which is wrong too. And so it's got to be again, the whole gist of this conversation is we have nobody leading and managing any of this stuff. So every time a ruling comes down like Diego Pavia, we spend 52 minutes on here talking about all this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like, man, we'll probably come on here tomorrow and talk about it a little bit too. I just like, man, I say the P word on here, and y'all can use your own imagination, but it's the portal for me on here. It's become a cuss word that people just get sick of it. So, I mean, the coaches have valid points. The players have valid points. That's why it takes somebody coming in there and saying, okay, I hear both sides. Here's what we're going to do to come in and meet in the middle. All right.
Right now, I don't know what's the goal. What's the ideal setup?
I'll tell you the ideal setup.
Well, I think that until you have this discussion, and not 50 things that you want to see happen, just 10 things that you want to see happen. And once those 10 things happen, then everybody's happy. I mean, until that happens, we're going to be in this same boat where
you just used Perry Thompson as an example. I thought you used a perfect example. He didn't really play much this year. If he didn't get in the portal, which I'm glad he's coming back, because again, I don't think he thinks I can get on the field and play, and I hope he does, because we know he's talented. But you look at him, if he's locked in for 2 years, which he'll be back next year, if he does come out and have a great year next year, which we all hope he does, you got to understand now he's got leverage to go out and negotiate.
And I like that.
And I love it too. And you're going, yeah, he's worth every penny he does. We'll go in here. We want to keep him.
Yes.
If we don't feel like we want to spend X number of dollars, now he's got the freedom to go shop his talent.
I'm great with it. And you know that and he's been there 2 years, and he's given himself time to develop, and he's given himself time to decide whether he loves Auburn enough to stick with it for a fair deal. But you can't do that in a 6-month window to a 12-month window. So I completely agree. And that would be the first thing that you have to fix. And I would change up, and being number one in that is you can't transfer 5 times in 6 years. You can't do it.
It's just ruined. That's what's ruined the sport. That's it. All right, let's move on for a few minutes and talk about Auburn basketball. Mr. Beautiful said Auburn basketball game today at 5:30. Monmouth is going to be one of those you probably sleepwalk through. But Randy, I don't have the graphic. I'll pull it up tomorrow. Okay, I'll pull it up for everybody tomorrow. But I saw that this morning where Kim Palm predicted the rest of Auburn's basketball games, and it's based on everything that's going on right now. But right now, they've got Auburn winning the rest of them. And, it's just like going down through there in the percentage, like the ESPN predictor that we go through all the time on a game. I mean, the lowest percentage that Auburn has to lose a game is on the road at Alabama, which is they still have a 67% chance of winning that game.
That's how good this team is. I mean, those of us that know how difficult going on the road in the SEC is, I don't think any of us are expecting Auburn to go through this next 20-game swing and only lose, 2 or 3 games. But I think that Auburn really does have the setup right here and the roster that could pull something off like that. I mean, what's the best SEC record we've seen in the last decade? I'd like to know that.
Well, Kentucky. That Kentucky team that had an
undefeated record going into semis.
Correct.
Yeah. So has anyone else only lost, say, 3 games? Has anybody else gone through the conference schedule and gone 15-3?
And that's what
the Auburn regular season SEC titles have been like 13-5.
Correct.
Is that right?
Right.
So has anybody won 15 or 16 games? This is one of those years Bruce Pearl keeps talking about history. That would be a goal. Let's have the best SEC record that any team over the last decades had. Because what year was that Kentucky team?
Whenever DeMarcus Cousins was there.
No, I think that this was a different year.
I think Cousins was on that team, and they lost. Okay. I think I'll pull it up and see real quick since you pulled it up.
So Eric Bledsoe and that group, because that was that freshman class. I want to say it was a different group that
may have been.
I think it was Karl Anthony Towns' group that was undefeated going into the semis, Brett. I don't think that was Cousins' group.
2014, 2015.
So 10 years ago.
31-0. That was that team. They ended up losing to Wisconsin, I believe, in the semifinals.
They did, yeah. Mm-hmm.
In the Final Four. But they had an 18-0 record. Arkansas was second to them that year, 13-5. So normally 13-5 gets you a conference title.
It'll tie you. Right. I think at 13-5, maybe if you get to a 14-win barrier, you're going to win the regular season. But
they had Devin Booker, Karl Anthony Towns, Willie Cauley-Stein, Porthras on that team. They were loaded. But that just tells you about basketball. It's kind of what I've been saying on here and prepping everybody, and I'm as overly excited as anybody about this basketball team. Is you can have a team like Kentucky, and you can go get beat in that tournament, and that's just basketball. And you know what? They don't fly banners about Kentucky's such a prestigious program. That team, although it went undefeated, gets kind of lost in the shuffle, man, which is crazy. But
we bring them up, and they're the ones like that UNLV squad following the national championship year, and then you come back and you lose to Leitner, and Duke plays that game in the semifinals. I mean, they're the one that you watch and you go, it doesn't matter how great you are. If you don't stay consistent in college basketball, when it gets to tournament time, you can lose one.
Right.
I like this, Ed. Y'all, this is what we need to do. What is the goal?
Right.
And Ed says here, 2-year contract, super conference, salary cap per position on NIL, and then after 2 years, it's performance-based NIL.
There it is.
All of it.
There
something, it is. List the 8 or 10 items that you're like, I don't want to do this if we can't make these things happen. And then go in there and negotiate and get a leader that knows everybody's on the same page. Because if you add it to 40 or 50 different items that you'd like to get, everybody's going to disagree with those. But there's got to be 8 or 10 we can all agree with.
13-14 usually wins the That's right. I mean, if you get to that 14 win mark, 14-4 usually will get you there.
So a history year would be Auburn winning 16.
Ken Palm's got Auburn's. Now that chart's got a predictability chart, but they also have another chart. Ken Palm said Auburn will go 15-3 in conference play.
We'd take it. Has Auburn ever won 15 games in conference? What's our best mark in conference play?
It'd have to be one of the last several years. I think we've knocked on the door of 15. I know we've been.
Well, I think we tied with Tennessee for the regular season conference title, maybe with Alabama with a 13-win season.
After we beat South Carolina.
Yep.
Yep. I think you're right. Auburn is a 35.5-point favorite tonight over Monmouth. Monmouth's 2-10, so we're not expecting a lot. You think they cover 35.5?
I do. I mean, I think they've had enough time off that they're going to be energized. They'll be in a home crowd where, it'll be raucous. It always is right now. It's a crazy place to witness how much the growth has been in that Auburn arena, that Neville arena now, and it's fun to be in there. You said you're heading over tonight, Brett.
Going to the game tonight. So, again, going to just take in a team that get an opportunity every time you get to see them play. You get to see them play. I mean, that's the deal. If you want to get a ticket to the Tennessee game or the Alabama game, and you don't have one already, buddy, you better get your pocketbook out. I mean, it's for lower level seats in some places on StubHub and Vivid Seats and all that. It's $3,000 to $4,000. So.
Jim says here, make sure to subscribe to this channel and tune in every day, 12 to 1 for more Auburn Blitz content. We're really working on it. We've grown a lot here in 2024 and hope to grow a lot here in 2025. You'll see us consistently on here in the mornings, after games, post-game shows, maybe at some different locations for those. If you're out there in the Auburn, Lake Martin markets and you'd like to have us promote your product, give Brett a call, 256-794-8223. He'd love to talk to you about ways that you can partner up with Auburn Blitz. One of our best sponsors out there this year in 2024. I want to thank Wade Bennett and Sense of Green a ton for coming on board with us and helping us get this podcast off the ground for heating, cooling, and insulation. Great carrier dealers here in the state of Alabama with location in Huntsville, the Lake Martin region, as well as Auburn and Opelika at Sense of Green. Sense of Green, big time partners with us, not only on our Sports Blitz programming, but the AHSA. And I'm not there this morning, but we're working today. Lee Apparel and Sign Source. And Brett, by me talking, I want to say this. A number of people have reached out and asked for us to do things that have seen us here on this podcast. So I can vouch that we are getting an ROI from me talking about Lee Apparel and Sign Source.
There you go.
On this podcast. So I actually got one last night that saw us on the podcast and is over in the Eufaula market and wants to know if we can do a vehicle wrap for him. And Jeff, yes, we can. And any vehicle wraps, we did one for a Cybertruck not long ago, but full vehicle wraps to boat wraps, all signage from start to finish to installing them. We can handle it. Sign Source 256-825-0197. And we've been screen printing for 20 plus years in the Lake Martin region. Got a lot of old Russell Corporation guys that are down there with us that do a tremendous job. So if you need custom apparel, corporate apparel, promotional products, give us a call at Lee Apparel, 256-825-0197.
All right. Enjoy your day up there in the mountains. You should have a good day up there. So
Dollywood today. That's where the kids are heading.
There you go.
Today. So
there you
I'm
go.
Gonna find a show or two. I'm not much for.
You're not gonna get on that roller coaster. No roller coasters for Randy.
My old stuff doesn't hold up real good on those roller coasters.
Got a couple more comments and we'll get out. Patrick said SEC conference play starts Saturday. We're about to find out about some of these teams, no doubt about it. And then Hugh says, good, honest talk, WD. Absolutely. That's what you're going to get here on this show, on our podcast. We're going to throw it out there and we let you guys have as much say as us. So that's why we love the interaction. Appreciate it. Please share, as you can see below my name, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Most of you are finding us there, but spread the word. Let's keep building this thing up. We talk real here. We love Auburn, but we're going to complain when things aren't going our way. We're not gonna try to shape this thing and make it rose-colored glasses when it's not. I think you lose credibility when you sunshine pump. So look, we're gonna give praise like to this basketball team. Can't wait to go watch them tonight. And but we're also gonna criticize where that's how you get better. That's how you make your program better. So you don't just sit back and go, oh well, everything's great. I love 5 and 7 seasons. I don't. I never will. Just like I don't like this portal thing. I don't care how many people argue with me. I don't like it. So we got to fix it. So that's what we do. All right, everybody have a great day. Auburn Blitz will be on at noon today, like Jim said. So make sure you tune them in. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.